Thank you.
Hi, everyone. For the newcomers, we're just going to quick go over what is going to happen here. Okay, so
Share.
well, no, not on the camera yet.
Yeah.
So this is our little king post bridge. That's N scale. There it is in HO. There it is in S. And there it is in O. And that's what we're building. We've done this many times at conventions and so on. It's just that now we have to plan the segments out as opposed to doing it all in one shot. So I'm just going to switch the cameras here over to Maureen, and we'll see what we can do today. There. All right. Now everybody should be at this stage now. We got this far last week, and you had a little bit of homework to put the stringers on underneath the ties. But the whole point of it is this is now a rigid assembly. You can do anything to it. You can drop it on the floor. So now it's rigid, so now you can work with it without fearing of anything else happening to it. So tonight we're going to
put the rest of the ties on this assembly, and then put some NBWs on the ties. So got your wood glue. I've got my tight bond in my little applicator bottle, and I'm just gonna, in between these ties that are 4 ties apart, you're gonna put 3 ties until you get to the center, and then you're gonna put 2 ties in between those 2 sections. So I just take my little bottle here and I start putting my glue on. I don't go by the drawing. I just kind of go by eye. And
you got to remember every 4th tie was put on last week, and it is to the drawing. This you have to do to your eyesight. So what looks good. So you put one on the quarter mark, one on the half mark, and on the 3/4 mark, and then you look at them. And this is why we don't use CA glue. So you have that few moments to adjust it.
Yeah, I just use my tweezers to kind of move them around to where it looks good. Trying to get them even on both sides. If there's any glue that's oozing out, I'll just take it off with the tweezers.
Now, because you distressed all 4 sides of the ties, if you want to get particular, you can actually look at the tie and say, oh, okay, this is the best viewed side, so you can use it on top. We know through doing this so many times that each side is about the same for us, but for the beginner, one side might be better than the other.
Don't put too much glue on. You don't need very much. Then you don't have to clean it off.
We have found over the years that people put way too much glue on, and that's why it oozes out all the time. We get asked, what do you do if the glue dries and you can see it? Well, usually what we do is say, take our black creosote stain or our creosote black stain or black paint and just touch it and it becomes a big knot. At least it doesn't look like a blob of glue.
Or some fine sandpaper over it too. Whoops, or a file.
Now, in our travels, because we do shows all over the country from coast to coast again, we do a lot of walking of tracks and bridges and so on. And yeah, it's nice to have them symmetric, but it's not overly important to have them completely symmetric, because through shifting over the years and the techniques used in putting it together, they're not always straight. Maureen when she first started, very symmetric. And I'm trying to say, oh no, if it's out of place, if it's too long, or if it's a little crooked, that's fine, because that's the way they were, within reason. So because it's rigid, you can see this is actually an easy process that goes pretty quick. If it sticks out over the stringer below, that's okay. I know some of the people who are registered with us are building it with us, and other ones have to build it later because the laptop or the computer is not where the workstation is. I think Greg is a good example of that.
Titebond is such a, I don't know, I really like that glue. It really is nice and tacky.
Many years ago, we used to use Weldbond because Weldbond is made about an hour away from us. And we used to take it to the shows and sell it. It was a awful strong glue. If it oozed out, it was a bubble of clear yuck, but the strength was unbelievable. Like if a piece actually fell on the floor, the wood would break before the joint would break. And then we had the issue where, like when we do shows, we're a motorhome and a trailer, and of course all the stock was in the trailer, and it froze, and we lost a whole box of glue, and we decided, okay, this isn't worth it. Glue you can get anywhere.
I think that's pretty good.
It's almost looking like a bridge.
Yeah. So now I would normally put a weight on there, maybe put a book or something over top, and then weight the book and let it sit for just maybe half hour or so.
Take the bottles for a sec.
Oh.
For the new people, this is our weathering mix that we manufacture, and because this is 8 ounces and this is 8 ounces, there's a whole pound of weight on that. The only reason we're building an S scale one right now is so it's big enough to see. Like if we were doing the little N scale one, you wouldn't be able to see anything on it.
So anyway, you would let that set up and glue for, maybe 20 minutes. That's all you need. And then we're going to do the NBWs.
NBWs, that stands for nut, bolt, washer. And the ones we use are actually Tichy Train Group. There's other manufacturers out there, but we like these ones because they're kind of a reddy brown color, I guess you'd call it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you don't really have to color them in any way. Now, if you actually look at it, you'll see that it is a hex nut on a round washer.
What I'm doing right now is I'm just piloting a hole to take these NBWs, and I like to use a drill bit. So you've got a little drill bit in your kit, so you can use that one, just put it in your pin vise and just pilot a hole on every 4th tie.
You can see on the drawing all the little dots there. That's what the NBWs are.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is target it. So you put your drill bit about halfway through where the stringer is and halfway through the tie, and there's your crosshairs, and go for it. Now don't go all the way through because it's only needs to be like 1/8 of an inch deep, maybe at the most.
Just try to get it cleared out as much you can.
And the fellows who are doing N scale, this is where we said that you might need the little pen.
That little pen. You could use a push pin if you want. I don't like doing that. I like using the drill bit just because it takes that wood out for you. I need space to aim for.
Well, actually, a push-pull pin leaves a big crater, and it's easier to put the MBW to sink it home.
Now, when you get closer to the center, it's not 4 ties away. You just look on your drawing, and just place it where the drawing says.
This is much easier to do this now. Usually an MBW is something you do closer to the end, but when you get the whole structure together, it's really hard to get your hand and the pin vise in there to do it. So it's so much easier to do it now. That's what we try to outline in our instructions. It's easier to do something ahead of time than afterwards, because you can get yourself caught in a position that you just can't get in there. Now, we have given a segment on MBWs there a couple months ago, and you'll see all sorts of neat little techniques. After that segment, we had somebody come in and say, instead of cutting the MBW straight across, to cut it a little bit on an angle so that the tail of it has a point to it. So it's actually easier to install. And we have kind of took that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That was a great idea.
Great idea.
So we learned too.
You N scalers, if you've had your pen, you're done by now, I'm sure.
Now the N scale does have MBW, so using the small MBW, the bigger ones are actually square nut on a square washer. So you'll find those later. That's about 2 weeks or 3 weeks away. So an N scale, yes, there are MBWs for that, but that is for the rods, not for doing this. You got to remember, Maureen has done thousands of these, so she's pretty quick at it.
Thanks for the pressure. So I've got all the holes piloted. So now I'm gonna cut off these little NBWs off the casting. So just make sure your X-Acto knife is nice and sharp. And if you want to do it the way that gentleman suggested, just do it on a little bit of an angle. And if you're doing that, then you're obviously just going to be able to do one at a time. Do it on a white background, and you'll be able to see them well.
This is where 50% of your MBWs go flying somewhere where you can't find them.
Just just make sure you've got
Jim knows that.
You've got your finger, your pointer finger right kind of over top of it when you're cutting it, and it won't fly away on you. And leave a pretty good tail. I think you can see that. I'm not sure if you can or not, but.
Like a lot of people, when they cut them off, they try to cut the whole spew at one time. Wrong. That's completely uncontrollable.
Get yourself a fair amount here to work with.
Need 14.
14.
14 anyways.
I'm not sure how many. I think I'll just do one screw here.
But the MBWs are something that you do various times along the way.
Yeah, you won't need them all tonight, so don't cut them all off. got some to put on the bracing.
And do not sneeze.
There we go. I'm going to push them up on the white part here. Okay.
You said no sneezing. Is coughing okay?
Yeah.
Depends on how strong the cough is.
Then just get yourself a little pot of glue. I just use your tight bond or your whatever, Elmer's or whatever you got, whatever wood glue. Just put a little dab on the wax paper, and then take those nice pointy tweezers that I was talking about last week. They just have to be approximated together. You know, you get some of those tweezers that the ends kind of flare out.
Yeah, the points have to meet.
Yeah, it's pretty.
If they're flared, they won't work.
It's pretty impossible to pick these things up if the points aren't together, for sure. So just grab it behind, just underneath the head, and then.
So Larry also brought up a good question. What type of squirt ball are you using for that glue?
Oh, that little applicator bottle. You can find those on Amazon. Just look up a glue applicator bottle, and they come with different size needle gauges. I'm using the 18 gauge, but you'll get a package of about maybe 8 of them for something like $12.99, and they'll have different size gauge needles. I prefer the bigger one. I don't know why. I just like it better. It works great. So go on Amazon and just look up glue applicator bottles. There's all different kinds, but this is a really good one. There's one there that will give you the applicator bottles plus that little funnel we were talking about last week. It helps you put your weather mix back in the in your bottle.
Well, the other thing is to use a mason jar.
Yeah, or just use the mason jar. So yeah, grab that NBW under the head. Let me try this one again. Just under the head, and then dip the tail in the glue and go for that hole. Just pop it in. This one doesn't want to go. My first one. Try again. There you go. So you just pop it in, give it a tap on the top. I usually take my finger and just dab it so that the excess glue comes off. And
yeah, it's hard to see them now when they're in there, but you'll find in about 3 weeks when we put the highlight color on, it actually emphasizes them. And you'll be able to see with your naked eye that it is a hex nut. It gives a third dimension to it.
This takes a little bit of time, for sure. I don't know if you can see them or not.
It's really hard, isn't it?
Well, there's supposed to be one there.
Yeah.
One there.
Yeah.
But yeah, this takes some time. This one's bouncing around on me because the wax paper is not smooth.
Static electricity too.
Get yourself some extra light. That helps. And I'm having trouble with that one. Patience is key, for sure.
I always say if you do 10, you're an expert.
Well, I do have a question with the comparison to the queen post. Is this right now sort of, there's no difference between the two at this point, or no?
Well, the queen is a king post that's elongated. Okay, the V's at the end are the same, but in between the two V's, it's horizontal. And that still gives the same tension and compression. Of course, it took some time for them to figure that out. And then if you look at the queen post, that's actually the forerunner of the Howe truss. So a king post usually could span up to about 50 feet, depending on how big of timbers they could get for it, where a queen post can be multiple. It can be one queen post after another, and as long as it's got piers underneath. And it looks pretty cool to have 3 or 4 of them in a row.
But right now, the construction-wise, it's the same, except that you just got longer pieces.
Basically, yeah.
Gotcha. Understood.
It's got more rods in it too. Like the queen posts from the top of the truss to where it meets the. Let me see if I can show you where it comes down to here. So if you just take this and kind of spread it out, and then the rods have a big X in the middle, just to hold everything taut as part of the integrity of the bridge.
But you have not gotten that far on this kit yet.
No.
Well, we have the queen post. It's a separate kit.
Yes.
And another place where you use a king and a queen is on the braking systems under any type of freight car. Again, the king has one vertical rod where the brake lines come off of it, and the queen brake line comes down a slant and then across on the horizontal and back. And again, it's got 2 vertical trusses on it.
Oh, okay.
And that's exactly the same structure.
Rick, if you don't mind me asking, do you know how they got the names king post and queen post for those 2 designs or styles?
I've thought about that many times, and all I can think of was it was such a structure that maybe the king decided to have it. I want this across my mold, and they called it the king post. I'm not sure. The king post is only one truss, and that can be a wood truss or multiples of the rod. That's actually how it progressed. It was the vertical rod was actually a wood timber to start with, and they just weren't strong enough. So then it became a rod, and then 2 rods, and then 3 rods, and 4 rods, and 5 rods. And by the time they got that far up, they scrapped the whole idea. Just go to concrete, steel and concrete. But see, back then, and I use the TH&B as a good example. That's the Toronto, Hamilton, Buffalo. There's a lot of little rivers going across there. And most of them, to start with, were coast bridges. So that's right in our area right here that they were used a lot. But I think it was about 1830 or 1840, like 80% of the bridges in North America were a king or a queen. At that time, they didn't have these big, long spans. So the locomotive would have to go down an incline, cross the little bridge, and then back up the other side.
That's it. Got those done. So they're finished. I think we have some time, Rick, if you want to do the ties. I'll file the ties at the end of the four ties.
We need to do this for homework. At the end, of these ties, they are actually maybe protruding out over the stringer.
Might be.
That is not a good, because the diagonal comes up like this, and it has to rest against the stringer to do a tight bond, okay? So if these last 4 ties are protruding any little bit, it's going to interfere with the next step. So we need you to file them flat to the stringer.
Yeah, just make sure it's flat to the stringer.
So all 4 corners, and they need to be flat, or else the wood will not stick properly. Diagonal, the brace, sorry.
You can always touch up the ends of your ties then with some stain.
If you get some little marks on the stringers, don't worry about it.
Just, they have to be flat.
See, what I mean is that this will be piece that will be coming up like this, okay? And it cannot be interfered. If the tie's too long, this will be on a slant. So it's got to be right flush with the stringer. You can see what I mean here. Actually, if you look at that one, it's the 3rd tie-in and the 4th tie-in.
I think that's it. Yeah.
You want to put the inch shims on?
I don't know if we have time.
Yeah, we're kind of running on time.
We're okay?
Well, we've got 5 minutes, so.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. You want to do the cord or the cord?
Yeah, let's do the cord so that it dries for the next week.
Okay. So the cord is the 8x12 piece of lumber that you have.
Turning it upside down, this is the cord that goes along. So all the stringers will rest on it, and that's where the truss actually comes up. And yeah, there we go. That's better. That's what holds the truss in tension.
So you can probably your drawing tape down with your ties, the either the 14 or the 16-foot clearance. So take your cord, the vertical height up. How do you say that?
I suppose.
Yeah. Okay.
Like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that like a 2x4 type thing. Okay, you don't put it the 2-inch flat. That's not going to hold anything. You got to put the 2-inch and the 4-inch up and down. So the 2-inch is the width, and the 2x and the 4 is the height. So you have to cut that one to length.
You just place it on your drawing, and
probably best to place it just beside it, just a little bit there. You can see. You can also use one of the other views to do that too.
I'll cut it at the top part so you can see.
Okay.
So I've got it there. Off a little to the side so I can see where to cut. I just put a little groove in it. And then get my mat and finish cutting it. There we go. I'll just give a little file to the end of that.
You can touch up the end later.
Yeah, you can stain all this, all your boards later.
Now, the important thing about this is that it's in the center.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking down at it, you can see how it lines up with that tie, that center tie. So it should be right in line with that center tie and then equal distance on each side. So yes, it's going to overhang.
So I'm just trying to get it in the right spot here.
If we want to get this assembly drying for the next week so that it's not flimsy when you do it. So it gives it lots of time to dry.
Okay, so then take your glue in whatever applicator you have it. And I'm just making sure here. Okay, so then take your glue. Okay, just a minute. That plug here.
Pin vices work good for this too.
And then put your glue down the center. Just follow that tie. Whoops. And then vertical height up. Get that right. Equal distance from each side. Trying to look straight down on it here. I think that looks pretty good. Take off the excess glue.
Notice how the excess glue goes on her fingers?
Somewhere, I'm gonna put it somewhere.
I would have to assume it's a lot easier to see and line up stuff without a camera in your way.
Yeah. I hope it's in the middle. I think so. I think that looks pretty good. It's nice when you can flip it over, then you can really tell if you
Okay.
how close you are.
Leave it alone for a week.
Yeah, you can just kind of check it out, flip it over.
Again, that's why we don't use CA glue. If you need to adjust it, you can adjust it.
Okay, looks good.
Okay, so that's it for this week. Next week, we'll be putting what's called the end shims on and probably the braces on each side. But I think going along pretty good, eh?
Yeah, really good.
And so far what we've seen is it's everybody's doing a pretty good job. So, okay, back to you, Jim. See you next week.